I'm sure you've heard the phrase, the government would never do that. Well, if you've read or watched anything other than the mainstream media for more than 5 minutes, you would quickly realize that that statement is false. Actually, sometimes you can just read a mainstream article and find out some strange thing the government did years ago. But still, people insist the government would never do that. Let's take a look at times when they did. The oatmeal experiments occurred in the 1940s and 50s, a time in which interest in nuclear science was at its peak. The US had just dropped the atomic bomb, twice, opening the door for more research into the effects of these bombs, as well as how the technology could be used for other endeavors. One of these uses was nuclear medicine, which is the use of radioactive material for research and diagnostic tests. Some types of these tests include a bone density scan, which shoots X-rays into your body and bones to see how much energy is absorbed, thus showing if your bones are dense enough to be deemed healthy. Another one of these tests is a cardiac SpCT perfusion, which is where they inject you with a radioactive tracer and measure how your heart reacts to physical stress. Apparently this type and amount of radioactive material is safe for the human body, but, who knows? In the experiments, researchers from MIT and Harvard procured children from the Walter E. Fernald School to use as test subjects. Now, first of all, these were children, and even if it was explained to them, they most likely wouldn't know what they were participating in. 2. They were lied to about what they were participating in. 3. Some were handicapped. The school was for handicapped children and children whose parents abandoned them. It said that around half were handicapped and half were not, compared to modern public schools, which are close to about 100% retarded children, myself being one of them. And if it couldn't get any worse for these kids, there were reports of sexual abuse at the school, because of course. This is the shit you see in a drama film from like the 1990s that you watched randomly on TV one time when you were like 11. Also the Epstein files. So these kids are literally in hell. Fuck it. Why not trick them into eating radioactive oatmeal? So these scientists and doctors tell the children aged 10 to 17 that they're going to be in a science club. The researchers then gave them oatmeal laced with radioactive calcium and or iron. The tests were carried out by researchers from MIT and Harvard, but guess who funded them? Quaker Oats, of course. Quote, the National Institutes of Health, the Atomic Energy Commission, and the Quaker Oats Company funded the research, which was designed to determine how the body absorbed iron, calcium, and other minerals from dietary sources and to explore the effect of various compounds in cereal on mineral absorption, unquote. So Cream of Wheat had studies showing that oatmeal interfered with iron absorption, while their product did not. Quaker did not like this, obviously, so they decided to do tests of their own, which led to them paying researchers to trick kids into eating radioactive oatmeal for breakfast. They also injected the radioactive calcium into the children as well. Some of the kids in the experiment were allegedly, definitely, exposed to amounts of radioactive material exceeding federal regulations, which in the 1940s and 50s probably was not strict at all. Also, they're children, so their bodies aren't as good as adults in handling toxic substances. There was a hearing held before the Senate's Committee on Labor and Human Resources in 1994. In it, this bundle of sticks from MIT, the Vice President and Dean for Research and Professor of Physics, J. David Lister, said that no significant amount of radiation was given to the children, and an investigative task force found that the kids weren't harmed from the experiment. I can't tell if I don't believe them or I do believe them, and it's a relief. If some of the children were handicapped, then they might not be able to tell us if they were suffering from some ill effects from these tests, unless they were diagnosed with something. It looks like there's a payout of $4 million for each subject, so maybe there was some NDAs involved, or maybe a lot of the people who were test subjects just wanted to take the money and move on, which I can't blame them. Also, the guy who the school was named after, Walter E. Fernald, apparently supported eugenics, but not forced sterilization. So like eugenics light, I guess. But then he changed his thinking and began to try to reform the school system for the mentally handicapped and abandoned. Basically, he tried helping to make schools for the handicapped better, or so they say, because I read this in Harvard Magazine. So make of that what you will. These kids just wanted something good in their lives. I can only imagine with their living situation, they just wanted something to look forward to. One of the kids, Fred Boyce, who was at the school because he was abandoned by his family, said that he hoped the scientists would notice his and his peers' mistreatment and put a stop to it. But we now know how that turned out. If you like the video, please give it a like and consider subscribing, as it helps my channel in the algorithm, and comment if you feel like it. Back to the video. The Tuskegee Syphilis experiments, or officially the Tuskegee Study of Untreated Syphilis in the Negro Male, was a series of cobbled together experimentation on the black population of Macon County, Alabama. It was started by the Public Health Service in 1932 and collaborated with the Tuskegee Institute in Alabama. The study consisted of 4,000 men who were initially screened, which ended up with 600 men, 399 who had syphilis, and 201 who did not. They were promised free medical exams, free lunch, and payment for burial expenses. They were then observed, with some getting small amounts of treatment for syphilis and some getting none at all. They were told that they had bad blood and the doctors would cure them. Peter Buxton was an epidemiologist who worked for the United States Public Health Service. In 1966, he learned of the experiment after hearing of a doctor who prescribed penicillin to one of the subjects in the experiment, and was reprimanded by the Public Health Service for doing so. So the Public Health Service got mad at a doctor for treating a patient. How uncanny. It's almost like public health officials have not and do not give a fuck about your health. Buxton couldn't stand to work at the Public Health Service any longer and enrolled in law school. In 1972, he leaked the experiment to the press. In 1973, Fred Gray, a civil rights lawyer, filed a $1.8 billion lawsuit against the U.S. government. $1.8 billion in 1973 is equivalent to about $13.5 billion today. So I don't know how he thought he was going to get even close to that, but I guess he highballed him. You know, start him high and then whittle him down. Quote, "The suit never went to trial, and in December 1974, the U.S. government agreed to a settlement of $10 million. No participant received more than $40,000. Most got less than $20,000. For his services, Mr. Gray was paid more than $1 million. Unquote. So it seems like a great business idea. I mean, just sue the government on behalf of people who were harmed greatly and take most of their money. Make bank. Profit. The death toll of the experiment ranges from 28 to 100 to 300. I can't really find any exact numbers, but one is too many. And the men weren't the only people harmed from the experiment. Wives and children were infected with syphilis as well, as the wives got it from the men and the children were born with it. In 1997, first black president Bill Clinton invited the remaining subjects of the study and their families to the White House and apologized to them. The last survivor of the study, Ernest Hendon, died aged 96 in January of 2004. This study is cited as to why black people are hesitant to participate in medical research. And, yeah, duh, I don't blame them. I don't blame anyone for being mistrustful of the medical system after reading about these experiments and many more like them. Medical professionals are like, hey, yeah, we don't do that anymore. Come on, just let us inject you. Let us poke you and prod you. Come on, that was like 100 years ago. We're good now. We won't do that again, okay? Pinky promise. Over the course of 6 days, starting on September 26, 1950, members of the U.S. Navy aboard an unidentified minesweeper ship began to spray bacteria into the air about 2 miles off the coast of California near San Francisco. The experiment was headed by the U.S. Army, and the purpose was to blanket San Francisco and the surrounding areas in the organism to figure out if a biological attack on the US was possible from the ocean. The bacteria is called Serratia marcescens, and it has a reddish to pinkish color. One of the reasons the Army chose it for the experiment, as it's easy to identify where it's taken up residence. I also read that a bacteria called I'm not even going to look this up. I'm just going to try to pronounce this. I'm going to do my best. Bacillus astrophaeus. There's no S in that. Why did I put an S in that? Bacillus atrophaeus, or Bacillus globigii, and these bacteria were released as well. But I don't think this bacteria was found to have caused any infections or any adverse effects. Not to say that it didn't though. The Serratia bacteria had mixed with the natural fog in the area. Bacterial fog? Bog? So the city was just covered in this bacteria, and the Army of course said it was not dangerous to humans. But it was soon found out that this wasn't the case. I don't believe that they thought it was benevolent though. I think they're lying about that. I think they knew it wasn't going to cause mass casualties, but they had some idea that it could harm people. Maybe not killing them, but at least causing infection. And we'll soon find out that that assumption was false. There was a study in 1945 where 4 healthy volunteers were sprayed with Serratia, and were found to have developed mild symptoms but ultimately recovered within days. So they did know that it caused bothersome symptoms at least. Quote, in 1950, 4 days after the Army secretly released near San Francisco what then were considered harmless bacteria called Serratia marcescens, a 50-year-old kidney disease patient at Stanford Hospital developed a urinary tract infection that was found to have been produced by Serratia marcescens. In the next 5 months, 10 other Stanford Hospital patients who had undergone urological tests, which often led to secondary infections, developed Serratia marcescens infections of the urinary system, heart, and blood. Unquote. Around a month before the experiment actually took place, a 75-year-old man named Edward Nevin had his prostate removed. Soon after the Army started its germ warfare on the American population, he contracted a urinary tract infection. Not long after, the infection spread to his heart, and he developed endocarditis, inflammation of the inner lining and valves of the heart, and died in November 1950. In 1981, Mr. Nevin's grandson sued the U.S. government, stating that the experiment is what killed his grandfather. The military maintained that the death was a coincidence, but their lawyers also said that they should have immunity from the case due to the discretionary function exemption to the FTCA 28 U.S.C. 2680A, which states, quote, any claim based upon an act or omission of an employee of the government exercising due care in the execution of a statute or regulation, whether or not such statute or regulation be valid or based upon the exercise or performance or the failure to exercise or perform a discretionary function or duty on the part of a federal agency or an employee of the government, whether or not the discretion involved be abused. Unquote. Now, it looks like this exemption gives the government full immunity to pretty much anything. As long as the people who carried out the act supposedly exercised care and caution when carrying out said act, I guess they're fine. I guess if they're like, yeah, we were careful, we thought about it, it just, shit didn't play out the right way. And of course, the Navy and the Army did not exercise caution and care because it spread an infectious agent into a fucking city. Even if they thought it wouldn't do any harm, you're still dousing people with an infectious agent without their consent. Heart valve infections went up at the time of the experiment, as well as infections seen in intravenous drug users. In 2001, a pharmacy named Doc's Pharmacy, located in the San Francisco Bay Area in Walnut Creek, had supplied medical facilities with cortisone shots meant to be injected into the spine for back pain. One man who had received an injection died the next day. The autopsy revealed that he died from a severe Serratia infection. The pharmacy's cortisone mixture was found to have been contaminated with Serratia, as the pharmacy's preparation areas were at high risk of contamination from unclean handling practices. Obviously, the pharmacy was at fault for not cleaning where they were working, but the Army also released this bacteria into the environment, so I believe there is much to blame for this as the pharmacy. It's thought that Operation Sea Spray changed the microbial environment in the area, and that's why hard-to-kill Serratia infections persist. Dr. John Mills, a San Francisco General Hospital physician who reported Serratia infections among drug addicts in the 60s and 70s, contacted Army Colonel Ignacio Hernandez Fragasso, an Army surgeon, to confirm the experiments. The good colonel told Dr. Mills that, quote, "These organisms decayed at an extremely rapid rate and that none remained after 24 hours. The likelihood of those perpetuating to this day is nil. Further, the possibility of this particular organism altering the microbiological flora of the San Francisco Bay Area is extremely remote, if not impossible," unquote. People got sick days, weeks, months, even years after the bacteria was released, so that's fucking bullshit. There was even Senate subcommittee hearings in 1977 that brought to light the experimentation that the military had been doing. The military lied here as they did at the trial in 1981, saying the bacteria was harmless, and talking about releasing biological agents in public areas as though they were routine tests, with no afterthought of their consequences whatsoever. There are many of these experiments and studies that the US government thought necessary to run on their own citizens. Running experiments on people of other countries is already egregious and evil, but when you do it on your own citizens, the trust is broken. They betrayed the very people that they are supposed to protect, but as a lot of people know by now, the US government, or any government for that matter, does not have your best interests in mind. What I've just presented today shows a complete disregard for bodily autonomy and lack of understanding of basic human rights. So when someone says, "The government wouldn't do that," show them this video and direct them to any of the sources in the description and let them read for themselves. Thanks for watching. Bye.